The earliest Jewish traditions for a funeral is rending one's garments, is making a tear in one's clothes, and symbolically we use a ribbon for that. And the reason why we do that is because we're telling ourselves and sending a message that we understand that in Jewish tradition a person is not defined only by their body. That even once a person's body is buried in the earth, their soul continues to be with us very much as it was before. So nobody ever disappears. Nobody ever goes away. The relationship just changes. As we know, even if we take something physical, we take this and we burn it, it doesn't go away. It just transfers into gases. Nothing in this world ever disappears. Things just transfer. All the more so with someone who spent their life giving and loving, and the memories that were created, those never go away. So when we tear our garments, we're saying, yes, we can tear our garments, but the person remains intact. And this is what we're saying here today as well. We're saying that we are burying your beloved husband and father, but what we're also saying is that person is very much with us, still today, as they were yesterday and they will be tomorrow. But it's just a new relationship. It's just pivoting and relating to that person in not a physical way, but more in a spiritual way. So I'm going to come and place these ribbons on you, and then we're going to tear them together and we're going to make the blessing together. Repeat after me the blessing. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Dayan Haamet. Blessed are you, the true judge. What we're saying is that we don't understand God's ways, but we know that whatever happens is ultimately for the best. We're going to begin by reciting Psalm 23. Mizmor LeDavid. Adonai Ro'eh La'achzar. The Song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in the righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I should dwell in the house of the Lord for the length of days. Mizmar LeDavid. Adonai roi elei echzar, binos desha yarbitzeni al mei manuchos yinahaleni. Nafshi yeshoviv yancheni, v'maglei tzedek lama anshama. Gam ki elech begeit salmoves lo irara, ki ata imadi. Shiftecha mishantecha hema yinachmuni, taroch lefanai sholcha neged sorara. Tishanta Hashem en roshi kosi ravaya, achtov v'chesed yudifuni kol yimei chayai, v'shavti bevet Adonai yorechya. It's with heavy hearts and deep anguish that we have come together to bid farewell to your dear Richard. We recall the blessings of his life, and we thank God for all that was good and true in his life, and for the precious memories which we know will endure forever. Eternal God, Creator, merciful Father of all, your children, bowed in grief, seek light to dispel the dark gloom which threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to those who mourn, for they are in distress. Bless them with your compassion. Ease their burden of sorrow. Send them light and peace, for it is written, fear not, I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you, and I will sustain you with my power. And we respond. Jewish tradition teaches us that every person is given two names. One, the name that they were given by their parents at birth, and the other is the name that they acquire throughout their life. How their friends and their families look at them. The Talmud says that when we ask who's going to be our attorney, who's going to be our advocate when we reach on high, and the Talmud says something very interesting. It says, Avnei Beso, the stones of our homes, they will be the ones who will be our attorneys. They will stand up for us and they will advocate for us. Why? Because our dear friend, our families, know much more about all those wonderful things that we do than most other people. So yes, Richard was given the name of Richard when he was born. But throughout his life, all of those wonderful names that he was called, all of those wonderful things, the dear father, a dear husband, loving grandfather, a dear friend, a loyal and generous, compassionate person, those are the names which are added throughout his life. And those are the names which are always remembered. And the Talmud finishes off with a peculiar story. It says that there was a group of people waiting on the seashore, and one group was crying and the other group was rejoicing. And he looked over in the horizon, and there were two ships in the horizon. And he asked, why is one group crying and why is one group laughing? And he said, because the group that's crying, their ship is sailing off to sea. The group that's crying, their ship is sailing off to sea, and the group that's laughing, their ship is coming into port. When the ship is going out to sea, the friends and family don't know how that voyage is going to be. They don't know whether it's going to be successful. The waters are treacherous, and there are many, many tragedies that can take place on this voyage. However, the ship which is coming into port The family are rejoicing because they know that that voyage was a success. They know that the ship is laden with all of the wonderful blessings that this voyage has brought forth. And so too when somebody passes away. We know that their ship is coming into shore. And we know the wonderful blessings that they have brought throughout their life. And we know that their life was a wonderful success. We look at the grandchildren, the children, and they know that what's been accomplished throughout this life has been so successful. So yes, there are tears of sadness because we're losing someone who we're not going to be able to see and talk to anymore in the same way. However, there should also be tears of joy, knowing that the voyage was successful, and knowing that what was created and built left this world in a better place than it was. There is no one better to share some thoughts about Richard than his dear son. Val not only was a son, but he worked with him every day. For a son, you get to see half of your dad. When you work with him, you get to see the other half as well. So there isn't anyone better than Val who can come forward and share some memories of his wonderful father.
As a child, it never occurred to me that my parents would never not be here for me. I took it for granted. I feel very fortunate and blessed to reach this age, and I've always had my mom and dad through good times and bad. But as an adult, I always knew that today would come and that one day I'd have to say goodbye to the toughest, strongest, bravest man I knew. But I wish I could have seen him as a kid before he grew up much too fast. He always used to say I was born the year Hitler came to power. And when he was the same age as my daughter, he was growing up engulfed in a world war and surrounded by unimaginable evil. But grow up he did and began working at a young age in Romania. And after the Nazis, then came the communists, and he made up his mind that he was going to get the hell out of there, hoping his mom and sister would join him. But when they decided to stay, he applied for a visa for himself, but then came a problem. He met my mom, fell in love, and then was married in 3 months. So then he applied for a visa for the two of them, and then another problem came along, me. So they had to start the process all over again. Finally having the opportunity at age 30 to leave behind everything they had, everyone they knew, their entire family, for a chance at a better life in the United States. They couldn't come directly here, but at first went to Italy. Not knowing a soul or the language, they made it work, counting down the time to when they could come to the U.S., now on an Italian visa. And here they landed. Of course, that was just the beginning of their American immigrant story, saving and working and saving until they could make their American dream a reality in the suburbs of New Jersey. As an optician in Newark and New York City, he worked 7 days a week and then started his own business in the basement of the house. I can remember him coming home from work at 6 or 7, having a quick dinner, and then heading down to the basement, working most nights until 11 or so, stopping just in time to settle in for the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, watch the whole thing, and start again at 7 in the morning. In 1976, he saved enough money to purchase an optical store of his own, but he needed help. How he talked my mom into getting her optician's license, I'll never know. But there they were, mom and pop, on Main Street, working 12 or more hours a day. And once that became too easy, he decided to invest in a small building and added unclogging toilets and repairing anything and everything a tenant could break. And so began another chapter in my dad's life. To say my dad was the hardest working man I know would be like saying it sometimes gets hot in Charleston in August. But there was the other side of him, the guy that loved comedy and loved to make people laugh, the guy that would stop strangers in a restaurant and tell them a joke or 10, the man that once signed up for an open mic night at a comedy club with an index card full of jokes, a clock, and a plastic lobster. The guy that was happy as raking leaves and working in the yard. The guy that couldn't stop bragging about his son, his daughter-in-law, the flying attendant, his grandson, the pilot, or the most beautiful girl in the world, his granddaughter, Sarah. The guy that bought a toy and lunch for a single mom in the airport, or picked up the bill for some active military in a restaurant. Always with a joke about how horrible it was being married, yet he was devoted to and loved his wife for more than 60 years. That was my dad. In later years, when the tough guy finally learned to say, "I love you," he would hang up the phone with, "I love you more. Dad, we love you most. Thank you, Papa, for all your hard work, your generosity and your kindness, for all your guidance and wisdom, and thank you for giving us the gift of your sense of humor, and above all else, for your love. Rest now, you earned it."
Please rise for the memorial prayer. El Molei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucho Nechona, Kanfei Ashchina, B'malos Kadoshim Otarim, Kozoraki Amazirin, Es Nishmas Richard Bashem Ben Abraham, Shalach Liolamo, Avu Shanachnu Mispalalim, Biad Azkarat Nishmaso, B'gnein Tzrei Menuchoso, L'chein bal harachamim, Yastir Rebbe Seisek Naflav Li'olamim, Yitzror B'tzor Chayim Es Nishmaso, Adonai Yonach Alaso, V'yanoch B'shalom Al Mishkavo, V'nomar Amen. God full of compassion who dwells on high, grant perfect rest on the sheltering wings of your divine presence, among the holy and the pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament to the soul of Richard ben Abraham Avinu, who has gone to his eternal rest. His friends and family and loved ones pray for the elevation of his soul. His resting place shall be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore the Master of Mercy will care for him under the protection of his wings of all time, and bind his soul in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. He will rest in peace. Let us respond. Sometimes the most important things in life are also the most difficult. In Jewish tradition, the custom is that the final act of physical kindness we can do to a loved one is to place their body back in the earth. It's as if we are tucking them in for one last time. Even though it's a very painful thing to do, but nevertheless it's an opportunity for us to do one final kindness. So in a few moments we're going to lower the coffin down. Once we lower the coffin down, I'm going to ask you to come forward to place a shovel on earth on top of the casket. There are a few traditions, symbolic traditions that we incorporate. One of them is we use the back of the shovel in order to show our reluctance of doing it. The other piece is we don't hand a shovel from one person to the next, in order that we're saying is, I don't want to give up this wonderful last opportunity. So I'm going to ask, come forth to lower the coffin, and then we're going to proceed with the interment. everyone else can come forward, participate in this, would like to participate in this ritual. Now going to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. And it's on the back in the... Everyone can sit down if you want. You can stay seated if you want. If you stand up to do it, that would be best. You'll be the sacrificial lamb. So this is the memorial Kaddish. And what's interesting is in this memorial Kaddish, it doesn't mention anything about the person that passed away. It just says, may God's name be elevated. And why are we saying this during this time, asking God to be elevated? Because we understand that when a person leaves this world, a fragment of God is also taken with them. Every person has a fragment of the divine, has a spark within them of the creative force. And this world is a little bit of a darker place now. So we're asking God that God's name be elevated and may bring more light into the world. And we can do that through doing acts of goodness and kindness in memory of our loved ones that are no longer physically here on this earth. We'll recite the Mourner's Kaddish together. Yiskada, Yiskada, Shemei Rabba. B'yalma, B'yivrach Yerusei, B'yamlich Malchusei. B'chayecho, B'yomecho, B'chayei B'chol Beit Yisrael. B'agala, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה. יסברך וישתבח ויספאר וישרומם ויסנשא. ויסהדר ויסהלה ויסהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ועלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, Shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. He ends off with the words from Scripture. Bila hamaves lanetzach. We pray for a day when there will be no more suffering, where suffering will be banished from the face of this earth, where there will be no more sickness, illness, malady, and there'll only be celebration and happiness. And we ask that we remember our dear Richard always for the good. And may he always continue to inspire us, his children, grandchildren, and friends to lead